Alex Carter leaned against the railing of his repair skiff, watching as the alien vessel drifted into view. It looked worse than he expected. Deep black scars crisscrossed the ship's hull, evidence of a battle that had gone very wrong. He adjusted his comm unit. "All right, Liara," he said, his voice calm despite the tension. "I've got you in range. Let's see if we can stabilize that tumble." Static hissed in his earpiece before a soft, lilting voice responded. "Thank you, Alex. I've engaged emergency thrusters, but my ship's main systems are unresponsive." "Yeah, I can see that," Alex muttered. "Hold tight. I'll bring you into the dock manually." Carefully, he used the skiff's grapplers to latch onto the damaged vessel, nudging it toward the docking bay on his freighter. Alex wasn't entirely sure what he'd find inside, but he wasn't about to leave someone stranded out here. The reports of a Celatai ship in distress had reached him through a trader friend, and he'd been close enough to respond. Once the vessel was secured, Alex hurried to the airlock. The door hissed open, revealing the dim interior of the alien ship. Inside, the lighting flickered, and sparks occasionally burst from exposed wiring. The air was thin but breathable. Alex tightened his gloves and stepped in. "Liara," he called. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and willowy, with smooth, pale blue skin that glowed faintly in the dark. Liara's dark eyes met his, and she inclined her head. "You must be Alex." "Yeah," he said, taking a moment to absorb her appearance. "You look like you've been through hell." "I've certainly been better," Liara replied. She walked toward him, favoring one leg. "My ship's power core was damaged during an ambush. It barely held out long enough to send a distress signal." Alex nodded, glancing at the wreckage around them. "Let's get you out of here. You're lucky I found you when I did." Another few hours and the life support might have given out completely. Liara hesitated, her gaze flickering over his human face. "Why would you help me?" "You had no obligation." He shrugged. "It's what we do. Someone's in trouble, we step up. Besides," he added with a half-smile, "if our situations were reversed, I'd hope you'd do the same for me." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Thank you." They made their way back to Alex's ship. Once inside, Liara sank into one of the seats, clearly exhausted. Alex handed her a small emergency ration bar and a water pouch. "Here. I don't know if it's anything like what you're used to, but it should help." She took it cautiously, studying it before taking a bite. "It's adequate," she said after chewing thoughtfully. Alex chuckled. "Yeah, well, it's not exactly five-star dining." As she ate, he started running scans on her ship's core from his console. "So, what happened out there?" he asked, breaking the silence. Liara hesitated, then said, "I was on a diplomatic mission. A routine delivery of correspondence between two systems. Nothing classified, just a gesture of goodwill." "And then?" "Then I was attacked," she said simply. "Pirates, I think. They disabled my engines and boarded the ship. I fought them off, but not before they managed to cause significant damage to the core. They took nothing of value, at least, not to them, and left me to drift." Alex frowned, typing commands into the console. "Cowards. Sounds like they just wanted to make trouble." "Indeed. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it much longer." "Well, let's make sure that doesn't happen again," Alex said. "Once we've got your ship patched up, I'll see if I can upgrade your core shielding. Maybe give you a few surprises for any future unwelcome guests." Liara raised an eyebrow. "You would do that for me?" "Why?" Alex shrugged again. "Call it professional courtesy. I'm a salvager. I know what it's like to be out there on your own." She studied him for a moment. "You are a curious species." "Tell me something I don't know," he replied, smirking. They worked side by side for the next few hours, Alex explaining human repair techniques while Liara shared a few of her own people's methods. Her calm, deliberate approach contrasted with his more improvisational style, but the two seemed to complement each other. Pass me that coupling tool, Alex said at one point. Liara handed it to him without hesitation. Your technology is surprisingly robust. It lacks elegance, but it is highly effective. High praise coming from someone whose tech looks like it belongs in a museum, he teased. She gave him a faint smile. Our ships are designed to last centuries. Yours are more disposable. Hey now, he said with mock offense. My freighter's been with me for a decade. It's practically family. Liara glanced around the ship's interior. It does have a certain charm. See? You're warming up to us already, Alex said with a grin. Their conversation turned to lighter topics, her homeworld, his experiences as a salvager. She described the sweeping crystal plains of Celador and the tranquil floating cities where her people lived. Alex shared tales of deep space junkyards and the strange treasures he'd found over the years. By the time they finished repairing the core's main conduits, Alex felt as though he'd known Liara for much longer than a few hours. She was still reserved, but her initial wariness had eased. They worked efficiently together, and her occasional dry wit kept him on his toes. All right, Alex said, standing back to inspect their handiwork. We've stabilized the core and brought the main power systems back online. She's not pretty, but she'll fly. Liara ran a hand along one of the repaired panels, her expression unreadable. You've done more than I could have managed alone. I owe you a debt. Nah, Alex said, waving her off. Just help someone else when you get the chance. That's how we do it. For the first time, Liara's lips curved into a small but genuine smile. You are not what I expected. Neither are you, Alex replied, holding her gaze. The moment lingered before he turned back to his console. Now, let's get out of here before those pirates decide to come back. She nodded, rising to her feet. Agreed. As Alex set a course for safer space, he felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had no idea what the future held, but something about having Liara aboard made him feel that, for once, he wasn't flying solo. Alex leaned over the console, scanning the data feeds from Liara's ship. The small freighter hummed steadily beneath his feet, carrying them deeper into unregulated space. He shot a quick glance at Liara, who sat at her own station, tapping delicately on an interface that projected from her wristband. Anything unusual on your end? Alex asked, breaking the silence. Nothing so far, Liara replied, her gaze focused on the alien readouts. The repairs are holding, though the core's efficiency is less than ideal. Your methods have proven effective, though unorthodox. Alex chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment. It's not every day I get to patch up an alien power core. Just don't expect it to handle more than a routine jump. She nodded, her expression as calm as always. It should suffice. We need only to reach the Arden relay station. Once we're there, I can arrange proper repairs. That's still a few systems away, Alex said, shifting his weight. We'll need to refuel before the next jump. I know a small outpost nearby neutral ground, low profile. Do you trust them? Liara asked, finally looking up from her console. Alex tilted his head, considering. I trust them to be greedy. As long as we pay in advance and don't cause trouble, they'll leave us alone. Greed is a reliable motivator, I suppose, she said thoughtfully. Very well. Let's proceed. They docked at the outpost's rickety station a few hours later. The place was a cluster of metal cylinders and mismatched panels, barely holding together. Alex led the way down the freighter's ramp, his steps careful but unhurried. Liara followed, her tall, graceful form drawing a few curious glances from the station's workers. Alex noticed her tense slightly, though she kept her expression neutral. Don't mind them, Alex said quietly. They've seen weirder. Perhaps, Liara murmured, her voice low. But I have not. They reached the refueling terminal, where a gruff, broad-shouldered human with a cybernetic arm greeted them. Carter. Been a while. Hey, Drax, Alex said with an easy smile. Got a light haul this time. Just need a quick top-off and we'll be on our way. Drax's metallic fingers clinked against the console as he punched in some commands. Payment up front, as usual. Of course. Alex handed over a small credit sheet. Keep it quiet, too. We're trying to stay off the radar. Drax grunted, taking the payment without comment. His gaze shifted to Liara, lingering for a moment before he asked, "Your new partner?" "Something like that," Alex replied, keeping it vague. "We're on a joint project." Liara didn't say anything, but Alex could feel her eyes on him. Drax shrugged, setting the fuel pumps in motion. "Whatever you say. Just don't bring any trouble here." "Never," Alex assured him. Back aboard the freighter, Liara finally spoke. "You seem accustomed to dealing with these types." "Comes with the territory," Alex said, settling into the pilot's seat. "When you spend most of your time out on the fringe, you learn to read people fast. Drax is harmless as long as you don't cross him." Liara's expression softened. "And yet, you trusted me almost immediately. Why?" Alex glanced over his shoulder. "You were in trouble. Didn't really see a reason not to help. Besides, you're a terrible liar." Her brows lifted slightly. "I beg your pardon?" He smirked. "When I first found you, you tried to act like you had everything under control. But I could tell you were running on fumes." Liara looked away, the faintest hint of color darkening her pale cheeks. "I underestimated your perception. Or you just overestimated your poker face," Alex said lightly. "Anyway, I'm glad I picked you up. You're not so bad once you get past that formal exterior." She gave him a sidelong glance, something almost resembling amusement flickering in her eyes. "And you are different from what I expected of a human." "Different good or different bad?" "Different," she repeated, the corner of her mouth twitching slightly. They settled into a steady routine over the next couple of jumps. Alex worked on fine-tuning the freighter's navigation system, while Liara took it upon herself to enhance the ship's sensor array using components salvaged from her own vessel. The more they worked together, the more Alex began to appreciate her meticulous approach. "Hand me that calibration tool," she said one day, her voice calm and precise. "Here you go," Alex said, passing it over. "How's it looking?" "The adjustments are progressing well," she replied. "Once we finish, this array will have a 15% higher range." "Nice," Alex said, leaning back against the wall. "I have to admit, you're pretty handy with these upgrades. Ever think about leaving diplomacy for a career in engineering?" Liara tilted her head. "Diplomacy is my chosen path, but I've always found technology intriguing. It provides clarity. If you follow the correct procedures, you achieve the desired result. People are less predictable." "True enough," Alex said, crossing his arms. "But that unpredictability is what keeps things interesting. If everything was as straightforward as wiring up a sensor array, life would get boring real fast." "I suppose that is one way to look at it," she said. After a pause, she added, "Do you find working alone to be satisfying?" Alex shrugged. "Has its ups and downs. I don't have to answer to anyone, but it can get lonely sometimes. That's probably why I talk so much. I've got no one else to bounce ideas off half the time." Liara nodded slowly. "I have spent much of my career surrounded by others. This is the longest I have been isolated." "Well, you've got me for company now," Alex said. "Not exactly the same, but it beats talking to yourself." "Perhaps," she said quietly, though there was a trace of warmth in her tone. As they approached the Arden relay station, the atmosphere in the cockpit was more relaxed. Alex found himself enjoying their conversations, the way Liara's reserved demeanor occasionally gave way to dry humor. For her part, Liara seemed to grow more comfortable around him, sharing small details about her homeworld and her people. "I think we're starting to make a good team," Alex said one evening as they worked on a maintenance panel together. Liara glanced at him, one brow raised. "You believe we are a team?" "Why not?" Alex replied. "We've been fixing things, dodging trouble, keeping this old boat running. Sounds like teamwork to me." She considered this for a moment, then nodded. perhaps you are right. Though I doubt our partnership would be recognized by any official body. Alex laughed. Maybe not, but I'll take what I can get. By the time they reached the relay station, their partnership felt natural, even easy. Alex wasn't sure what the future held, but he was starting to believe that they could face it together. Alex leaned against the console, staring at the complex array of symbols on the display. All right, explain this again. Slowly this time. Liara let out a soft sigh, the faintest hint of amusement in her expression. It's a simple alignment sequence. The relay station must be set to the proper frequency band before we attempt to transmit. The values are adjusted here. She gestured toward a series of glowing glyphs. Alex scratched his head. Right. And by simple, you mean completely alien and nothing like human tech? She raised an eyebrow, her calm tone betraying a touch of humor. I mean simple for someone with your apparent aptitude for improvisation. That a compliment? He asked with a grin. An observation, Liara replied, her eyes sparkling briefly. He chuckled, turning back to the console. Okay, so this one sets the band, and this one locks it in? Correct. Once you've entered the proper sequence, the station will stabilize its link, allowing us to send a secure signal. Got it, Alex said. He hesitated, then added, and you're sure this relay is safe? Nobody's going to pick up on what we're doing. Liara inclined her head. It is as secure as we can reasonably expect. This relay is in a neutral zone, and its protocols are designed to minimize detection. Reasonably expect, Alex muttered. Not exactly comforting. She tilted her head slightly, her expression still composed. If you are uncomfortable proceeding, we may wait. But the longer we delay, the greater the risk of interference. Fine, he said, holding up his hands. Let's get it done. As they worked together at the console, their conversation shifted to more casual topics. Alex leaned over, pointing at one of the glyphs. This one looks like a backwards letter G. What's it supposed to mean? It is not a letter, Liara said patiently. It represents a phase adjustment parameter. Phase adjustment, Alex repeated, shaking his head. You guys don't make this easy. Humans have their own complexities, she replied. Your language, for example. Multiple alphabets, numerous irregular rules. Okay, he interrupted, laughing. Fair point. But I'm still calling that one the backwards G. Liara allowed herself a small smile. As you wish. Just ensure you press it at the correct moment. The minutes ticked by as they fine-tuned the settings. Alex kept up a steady stream of questions, half out of genuine curiosity, half to keep the mood light. He noticed Liara seemed more at ease than she had when they first met. Her answers were more detailed, her tone more relaxed. So, Alex said, adjusting a dial, when you're not doing this whole diplomat thing, what do you do for fun? Liara glanced at him, clearly surprised by the question. Fun? Yeah. You know, something you enjoy. Hobbies, games, whatever. She considered this. I spend much of my time studying history, culture, the sciences. I also enjoy certain forms of artistic expression. Art, huh? Alex said. What kind of art? Music, she replied. Cellotai music often incorporates harmonic resonances that interact with our natural bioluminescence. Sounds fancy, he said. What's that like? It is difficult to describe, she admitted. The vibrations resonate through our entire bodies, creating patterns of light that correspond to the tones. It is both an auditory and visual experience. Okay, that actually sounds pretty amazing, Alex said, impressed. I'll have to hear it sometime. Perhaps, Liara said, her lips curving faintly. And what do you do for fun? Me? Alex shrugged. I tinker. Build stuff, take things apart, see how they work. I guess it's not that different from my job, but when you're in deep space, there's not a whole lot else to do. Liara studied him for a moment. You seem to find satisfaction in creating and improving. Yeah, I guess so, Alex said. It's like solving a puzzle. There's always something new to figure out. An admirable pursuit, she said. It is no wonder you adapt so quickly to unfamiliar technology. Thanks, Alex said, smiling. I'll try not to let it go to my head. After several more adjustments, they finally completed the sequence. Liara stepped back from the console, her posture straighter than usual. The relay is prepared. We can send the message now. Great, Alex said, cracking his knuckles. Let's make it quick and clean. She nodded, inputting the final commands. The relay emitted a faint hum, and a soft blue light pulsed across the room. Liara's fingers danced over the interface, her focus absolute. Alex watched, ready to step in if something went wrong. Transmission initiated, Liara said. It will take several minutes for the signal to reach its destination. Let's hope no one's listening, Alex said, crossing his arms. Liara glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. You worry too much. Better than not worrying enough, he replied. What happens when the message is delivered? She hesitated, then said, I will receive instructions on how to proceed. With any luck, my people will send a retrieval ship. And then? Alex asked. You go back to doing whatever it was you were doing before this mess? Liara's gaze dropped briefly before returning to his. That is the likely outcome. My responsibilities require me to resume my duties as soon as possible. Responsibilities, Alex repeated. Sounds exciting. It is necessary, she said, though there was a faint edge to her voice. Well, Alex said, leaning back against the console, maybe after all this, you'll think about taking a break. You know, try that whole fun thing. Liara looked at him, her expression unreadable. Perhaps. The relay's hum faded, and the console displayed a confirmation message. Liara nodded in satisfaction. The transmission is complete. We may now disengage from the station. Good, Alex said. Let's get moving. The longer we stay in one place, the more likely we are to attract unwanted attention. She followed him back to the ship, her steps measured. Once aboard, Alex powered up the engines and set a course for open space. The freighter slipped away from the relay station, leaving the neutral zone. In the evening, breaking the silence. She looked up from the console, her expression calm. I find that difficult to believe. You seem to know exactly what I am thinking most of the time. Do I? Alex said, leaning forward. Then tell me, what are you thinking right now? Liara's lips curved faintly. That you ask too many questions. He grinned. Guilty as charged. Her smile lingered a moment longer before she returned her attention to the screen. Alex watched her for a moment, then turned back to his own work, the hum of the freighter's engines filling the quiet between them. Alex rested his elbow on the edge of the console, watching as the unfamiliar starfield slid past the freighter's front viewport. The silence had stretched for several minutes now, long enough that it began to feel heavy. He finally broke it with a casual question. Liara, what exactly happens when you get back home? I mean, you've been talking about responsibilities, but what does that actually look like? Liara's gaze shifted from the navigation panel to meet his. Her features were as composed as ever, but Alex had grown better at reading the subtle shifts in her expression. There was a flicker of hesitation, just a moment, before she answered. It is complicated. My work is largely administrative, facilitating interstellar negotiations and ensuring that agreements remain intact. It involves a great deal of correspondence, analysis, and so a lot of paperwork. Alex cut in with a grin. You're basically a galactic bureaucrat? She narrowed her eyes slightly, though her tone remained even. There is more to it than paperwork. My position requires an understanding of multiple cultures, languages, and sounds like you're really into it, he interrupted again, his smile widening. Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. It is important work. I'm sure it is, Alex said, raising his hands in mock surrender. No offense intended. None taken, she said, though she glanced back at her panel, clearly done with the topic. Alex leaned back in his chair, watching her out of the corner of his eye. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story than she was letting on, but he knew better than to press. Instead, he turned his attention back to the repairs they still needed to finish before reaching their next stop. "Hey," he said after a moment. "Pass me that conduit scanner." Liara stood and retrieved the device from a nearby storage compartment, handing it to him without a word. Alex took it and knelt beside an open panel in the floor. "This connector's been acting up since we left the relay station. I don't want it shorting out in the middle of a jump." She knelt beside him, her movements graceful but deliberate. "Do you often find yourself making such repairs during flight?" "All the time," Alex said, his voice muffled as he leaned further into the panel. "It's like living in a flying toolbox. Something always needs fixing." "Does that not become tiresome?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But there's a certain satisfaction to it, too. Figuring out the problem, finding the solution, it keeps me sharp." Liara watched him work, her gaze thoughtful. "You seem to prefer a more practical approach. I can see why your profession suits you." "Well, thanks," Alex said, glancing up with a faint smile. "But it's not all wrenches and scanners. Sometimes I have to be a little creative. Like right now." He gestured toward a bundle of wires. "That connector's not seated right. Hand me that adjustment tool." She passed it to him, and he carefully adjusted the position of the connector until it clicked into place. "There," he said. "That should hold." Liara nodded, watching as he tested the connection. "Your resourcefulness is admirable." "Coming from you, I'll take that as high praise," Alex said, his tone light. "It was not intended as flattery," she replied, though the faintest hint of a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Alex straightened and closed the panel, brushing off his hands. "Well, I'll still take it. Thanks for the assist." "You are welcome," she said. "Though I find it curious that you prefer to work alone when you clearly excel at collaboration." Alex shrugged, moving to stow the tools. "Guess I never had much choice. Out on the fringe, it's hard to find reliable crew. People drift in and out, chasing their own goals. Eventually, I just got used to doing things my way." Liara tilted her head slightly. "Do you ever consider that it may not be others who are unreliable, but rather your reluctance to trust them?" He paused, turning to look at her. "Is that what you think?" "It is an observation," she said. "You are capable, but you rarely delegate. Even now, you only ask for my assistance when absolutely necessary." Alex rubbed the back of his neck, considering her words. "Yeah, maybe you've got a point. Trust is hard to come by out here. But you're different." Liara raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "I don't know," he said, meeting her gaze. "You just are. You've got this calm, steady thing going on. It's reassuring." She regarded him quietly for a moment before speaking. "Thank you. I suppose I could say the same about you." "Me?" Alex laughed. "I'm about as steady as a thruster on its last fuel cell." "Yet you always manage to keep this ship operational," she said. "You adapt to challenges quickly. That is a form of stability, even if you do not recognize it." Alex's grin softened. "Guess that's one way to look at it." They settled into a companionable silence, the hum of the freighter filling the background. Alex found himself glancing at her more often than he meant to, drawn by the easy way she carried herself, the way her presence had become a familiar, almost comforting part of the ship's rhythm. "Hey," he said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "I've got an idea." Liara turned her head slightly. "What kind of idea?" "Let's rig up an auxiliary power loop for the sensor array," he said, already moving toward the storage lockers. "It'll improve our range and cut down on the false readings we've been getting." "What do you think?" She rose smoothly, following him. "It is a logical improvement. Where should we begin?" Right here, Alex said, pulling out a coil of cabling. You start connecting these ends to the main panel. I'll handle the routing on the secondary array. They worked side by side, their movements increasingly in sync. Alex found himself enjoying the back and forth of their exchanges, her precise, almost clinical instructions contrasted with his more off-the-cuff suggestions. They debated the best placement for conduits, adjusted connections, and double-checked every step. As the hours passed, their work became less about the task itself and more about the ease with which they collaborated. Not bad, Alex said finally, stepping back to admire their handiwork. I think we just upgraded this bucket of bolts. Liara looked over the array, her expression neutral but her tone carrying a note of approval. It is a significant improvement. Your approach was unconventional but effective. Story of my life, Alex said with a grin. Unconventional but effective. She inclined her head. Perhaps that is why we work well together. Maybe, Alex said, holding her gaze for a moment. I think we make a pretty good team. Liara's lips curved slightly. I would agree. As they secured the last of the equipment and prepared for their next jump, Alex felt a quiet satisfaction. For all the challenges they had faced, it felt good to know that they were making progress, both in their journey and in their understanding of each other. Alex stood at the freighter's control panel, scanning the incoming data from the Sci-Fi transport ship. The sleek alien vessel loomed on the viewscreen, its smooth lines and faintly glowing hull a sharp contrast to his worn, patchwork freighter. Liara stood beside him, her tall frame composed, her attention focused on the transmissions. They've established a secure link, she said, her tone steady. I can confirm the authenticity of their credentials. Alex nodded. Good. Last thing I need is another ambush. He keyed the comm system. Sci-Fi vessel, this is the merchant freighter Stalwart. We've received your signal and are standing by. A voice replied, calm and melodic. Acknowledged, Stalwart. Diplomat Liara, your safe return is our priority. Please proceed to the designated coordinates. Liara glanced at Alex. These are my people. You need not be concerned. Can't help it, Alex muttered. I'm not exactly used to strangers showing up unannounced. They are here to escort me home, she said. They will not harm you. He exhaled through his nose, studying the ship on the display. You sure about that? I've seen enough double crosses to last a lifetime. I trust them, Liara said simply. Alex leaned back, folding his arms. All right. I'll take your word for it. Just know I've got an exit route planned if this goes sideways. Noted, Liara said, a faint trace of humor in her voice. The freighter drifted closer to the Sci-Fi ship, maintaining a careful distance. Alex stayed alert, his hands never far from the controls. Liara, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. He couldn't help but wonder how she managed to stay so calm, even in situations that set his nerves on edge. So, he said, breaking the silence, this is it, huh? Your ride home. It would appear so, she replied, her gaze fixed on the viewscreen. Guess that means I'm out of a passenger, he said, trying to sound casual. Liara turned to him, her expression thoughtful. You will no longer have to share your living space. I am certain it will be a welcome change. Alex smirked. You say that like you've been an inconvenience. Believe it or not, it's been nice having someone around. I see, she said, though her tone made it unclear whether she believed him. He rubbed the back of his neck. What I mean is, I've gotten used to having you here. Guess I'll miss the company. Liara's dark eyes held his for a moment. You have my gratitude, Alex. For everything. Before he could respond, a soft chime drew their attention. The Sci-Fi vessel was hailing them again. Stalwart, we are ready to receive Diplomat Liara. Please bring her to the shuttle bay. Liara straightened. That is my cue. All right, Alex said, forcing a smile. I'll walk you down. They made their way through the ship's narrow corridors, the familiar hum of the freighter's engines a steady backdrop. Alex felt a strange heaviness in his chest, an unfamiliar reluctance to let her go. He didn't say anything, though, and Liara didn't seem inclined to break the silence. When they reached the airlock, Alex opened the outer hatch. The Sci-Fi shuttle was waiting just beyond, its sleek form shimmering faintly in the light of the nearby star. Liara paused, turning to face him. "Alex," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Your assistance has been invaluable. I will ensure that my people recognize the role you played in my safe return." "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I was just doing the right thing." "Regardless," she said, "I will not forget." He hesitated, then nodded. "Fair enough. Take care, Liara." She inclined her head. "You as well, Alex." With that, she stepped into the shuttle, the hatch sealing behind her. Alex stood there for a moment, watching as the shuttle pulled away and disappeared into the Sci-Fi ship's docking bay. He let out a long breath, turning back toward the freighter's cockpit. It felt quieter now, emptier somehow. He supposed he should be used to it, he'd spent most of his life alone out here, after all. But something about Liara's presence had changed that, even if only for a little while. As he settled back into his chair, the comm system pinged. He frowned, glancing at the screen. It was an incoming message from the Sci-Fi vessel. Hesitating only a moment, he opened the channel. "Stalwart, this is Diplomat Liara," her voice said, clear and steady. "Before I depart, I wish to express my appreciation. Traveling with you has been an unexpected experience, and one I will remember." Alex leaned forward, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "Same here, Liara. Safe travels." "And to you," she replied. The channel closed, leaving Alex alone once more. He sat there for a long moment, staring out at the empty stretch of space ahead. Then he flipped a few switches, setting the freighter's engines to a low idle. There was work to be done, repairs to make, and jobs to find. But for now, he just let the quiet settle around him. Whatever came next, he felt certain that he'd remember this journey, what they'd built together, however brief it had been. And in that small, unspoken way, it was enough.